Hey guys, welcome to Graphic Designer Pro. In this video, we'll show you how to create simple and easy monograms in Adobe Illustrator. So download the free template file for this lesson from the description below, and now I'll pass you over to our lead designer Rory, who will take you through the process.
Thanks Ross. So jumping straight into Illustrator here, we have our template file, and in front of you you'll see the two examples of the monograms we're going to try and recreate today. So if you didn't know, a monogram is essentially two or more characters that are intertwined or linked in some way to make up a logo or an identifier for a person or a company. So on Pinterest here you can see we have a good few examples of different kinds of monogram, and they can vary hugely from very complex to very simple designs. So the example that I've got up here is more in line with the kind of thing we're going to be creating today, very grid-like and structured compared to some of the other monograms you may see. So jumping back into Illustrator, as you can see we have two different versions. Now one of these we've created with the use of a typeface and we've manipulated it to create the monogram, and the other on the right hand side we have just created from scratch using the creation tools we have at our disposal in Illustrator. So moving over to the right hand side, we have another artboard set up here just with some basic text. So this is just in Myriad Pro, and the first thing we need to do is select the right typeface. Now we're using a typeface that we've downloaded from a website called FontSpring. Now this is a great website for premium typefaces, and the best thing is that they have a range of free fonts on offer as well. So the typeface we've used in this example is called Conthrax. So I'm just going to do a search for that in here, hit enter, and this is the typeface here. Now you can see for the full family this is $98, which isn't actually that bad given that you get 14 fonts for that. However, if I scroll down you'll see we do actually have a free option within here. So the semi-bold variant is completely free to download and use commercially. Now I've already installed this on my computer, so I'm just going to jump straight into Illustrator, and we're going to go up to our character option, and I'm just going to do a search for Conthrax, and there it is up at the top. So you can see this is a nice clean sans serif font, and it's going to work really well for something like a monogram. When I chose this font I was really looking for something with very straight edges and very consistent line weight, which is what this typeface uses. Now to make a monogram from this I need to customize it, so what I need to do first is create outlines. So I'm just right clicking and select create outlines, and what I'm doing in both of these options is stacking them on top of one another. However, I want one of them to be quite short and wide while the other one should be quite thin and tall. So this is the best way to keep them legible, and I can overlap them and keep the whole thing looking very balanced. So I'm going to use my direct selection tool. The anchor points are showing up now, and you can see how cleanly this has been designed as well. So there aren't too many anchor points. That's always the sign of a well-designed typeface. So I'm just going to click and drag over the right hand points on the letter D here, and I'm just going to drag them over to the right hand side, holding shift to make sure it locks on this horizontal plane, and I'm going to go with something like that. Now I need to ungroup these just to make sure we're only dealing with one letter at a time. I'm going to rotate this 90 degrees, so again holding shift while I rotate, and now with my direct selection tool I want to stretch out the letter G as well to match the height of this D. So I'm just again clicking, dragging over the top points here. I'll also grab these two on the left hand side, and that means I know this middle section is perfectly straight, so I can now just click. So now going with one of the top anchor points I can just click and drag, again holding shift, and snap this to the top of the other character. I'll do the same with the bottom anchor points here, again grabbing the two on the left hand side, holding shift. I'll stretch this out to match the height of the D overall. If I select the character D here and rotate this, again holding shift, background. Now if I select both of them I can use my alignment options to center them both up, and we get a much cleaner looking design, and we have our first monogram almost done. Now the last thing I'm going to do is select both of these characters, go up to Object, Path, and Offset Path, and I'm just going to leave this at 10 pixels. I think this is fine for this example. I'm going to click OK. Now I want to click and drag over everything again, and then I'm going to use my shape builder, so Shift M on the keyboard, or it can be found over on the left hand side, and I basically want to get rid of everything on the outside outside, but I'm going to make some cuts between the letters to make it look like they are interwoven with one another. So what I mean by that is I can remove all of the sections I don't want by holding Option or Alt on a PC and just clicking and dragging through the areas I want to remove. I can also just click once while hovering over them to remove them as well. So I'm just getting rid of all of the outer sections for the time being. So I'll just speed through this for now. So now we're left with our original shapes, however we now have some intersecting sections that we're also going to remove. So in this example, I want to think about how these letters are interacting with one another. So for example, the top of the G here, I want to sit over the top of the letter D underneath. So to make it look like that, I'm going to delete these two areas to the left and right of the letter G flowing down here. And then I'm basically just going to alternate this. So further down here, I want this letter D to sit above the G. So I'm going to delete the shapes above and below, and again, alternate this again on the other side, and we get this quite interesting interwoven look with both the characters. Lastly, with everything selected, I'm just going to hit the Unite option within our Pathfinder just to merge all of the shapes together. And that's it for our first monogram. Moving on to the next one, I'm just going to use my rectangle tool to start this. And I'm just going to start by clicking and dragging a rectangle out, keeping it quite thin and tall. So again, the same principles apply with this. I'm going to flip this to a stroke, and I'll give this a stroke of about 60 point in this example. Now I'm going to duplicate this, so Command C or Control C on a PC and Command F, Control F on a PC. And now I'm going to rotate this 90 degrees. So again, holding Shift and rotating. Now what I want to do here is try and keep the gaps consistent with the stroke weight. So what I mean by that, if I select our original rectangle, I'm just going to scale the height here slightly, so holding Option or Alt on a PC while clicking and dragging the top handle, I'm just going to scale these out, and I want the gap between these two lines here to roughly match the stroke weight as best I can. So I'm really just eyeballing this, but it's just going to create a more balanced design with the negative space it's creating. So I'll go with something like that. It's not perfect, but it's going to do. What I need to now do is delete our duplicated rectangle and do this again. So Command C, Command F, and rotate this 90 degrees. Now to make our letter G, I'm going to do this the opposite from our last example. I'm going to make the letter G the wider character here and the letter D the taller character. So I'm just going to click off this rectangle, and I need to grab my line segment tool, and I'm just going to add a small line to the right of this rectangle here, and that's going to make up part of the letter G. So that will do for now. I'm just going to grab my selection tool. I'm just going to click over the rectangle and the line we've just created, go to my Pathfinder and select the divide option. Now I'll grab my direct selection tool, and I'm just going to select the line between the newly created line and the top of the rectangle and hit delete. And lastly, I'm going to go to my stroke options, and I want to select this projecting cap option just to match the width at the top of this letter G as well. Now all we need to do is round off some of the corners. Now if you noticed in our example, instead of rounding them, we actually have this beveled corner instead. Now this is very easy to do in Illustrator. What I'm going to do first is just grab my direct selection tool and click and drag over the corners I want to bevel. So I'm going to click and drag over the top right and bottom right corners of the letter D, as well as the top left and bottom left corners of the letter G. By default with our live corner widgets, if I just click and drag these, we're just going to get a simple rounded corner. Now that's fine, but in this example we want to make them beveled instead. So first I'm going to press Command Z to go back to our sharp corners. Now if I hover over one of these corner widgets, holding Option or Alt on a PC, if I just click on it, you can see it's changing now, and I need to click on it one more time to get the beveled corner option. If I now click and drag with all of these corners selected, you can see they are all beveling now instead. So I'll go with something like that. And now I'm going to expand this stroke to be a fill instead. So go up to Object, Expand, click OK. And now I'm going to do the same thing by going to Object, Path, Offset Path, And I'm going to bump this up a touch. I'll go with 12 pixels in this example, and we're going to do the same thing here, but we're going to make a slight tweak. So I'm going to click and drag over everything. Again, grab my shape builder. The shortcut is Shift and M. And again, holding Option, I'm just going to go around and delete all of the outer shapes that have been created. So nothing that's intersecting any of the characters at this point. We'll get to that in just a moment. So I'll just speed through this for the time being. Okay, so in this example, what I'm doing here is trying to think about how a shadow would be cast if these were interweaving. So what I mean by that is if I imagine my light source is hitting this from the top left-hand side, I want to create shadows on the right and bottom of the cuts within this shape. So starting with the letter G, if I imagine this section of the letter G is sitting over the letter D, I'm going to remove the shape below here. So again, holding Option, I'm just going to click on this shape. Now I want the left side of the letter D to overlap the letter G. So I'm going to delete the shape to the right hand side, and I'm just going to continue this all the way around. So again, the shape underneath the G here is going to get deleted, and then again the shape to the right of the letter D down in the bottom right hand side. And again, if I use the Unite option with my Pathfinder, we're left with a slightly different look, but we're getting the idea that these are interweaving and it's creating some sort of shadow. Now you can accentuate this slightly by applying some angles to this. So with my direct selection tool, I'm just going to select the bottom anchor point on one of the cut areas, and I'll do the same on the bottom right section, and holding Shift and hitting right on my arrow key, I'm just going to create a slight angle, and I know they are consistent with one another. And then I'm going to do the same with the cuts on the underside of the G here. So again, thinking about the way the light is hitting this, if it's hitting it from the top right, the shadow is going to be cast and get larger on that right hand side. So I'm going to select the two right anchor points sitting below the cuts in the letter D, and again holding Shift, I'll hit down on my arrows, and we get this quite interesting effect. And that's really it for creating these simple monograms using the letters D and G. I hope you've learned something new here, and you should definitely try these techniques out with your own initials and see how you get on.
So there you have it. Although we've looked at some simple forms of monograms, you'll hopefully have picked up some useful tips and the foundation that can be built on to create your own unique versions. If you have any questions, then just drop them down below and we'll do our best to help. And if you want to learn more about graphic design, then we've created a free 1-hour training where we reveal our top 5 secrets to creating beautiful graphic design. So make sure to sign up for the next free webinar. The link is in the description. You're not going to want to miss it. I'll see you there.